All right. Well, we're together again in practice. I do appreciate the Sangha and all of our group practice. We have a diverse Sangha here, and we all come together, to practice in the same room, uh, same extended room in this case, and doing the same practice, but we all have our own individual lives very uniquely in different ages, different challenges going on in our lives, different aspirations, different joys, different relationships with different people. So that's how it's meant to be. A real jeweled tapestry is the Sangha, and every jewel is precious and unique, holds the whole of our practice because each one of us is the Buddha and is whole and complete with all of our flaws and such. Schoen gave a very wonderful talk last week about being exposed, having the body exposed, and that being a real height of attainment, as we understand it in Zen, to be able to be that raw, that vulnerable, that exposed, that experientially attuned to impermanence and loss. I know everybody, the discussion after last week was very rich because all of us can really relate to that in our own lives. So we do, we can never depart from the home of our experience. Right. So I'm going to share some reflections here in this talk on this this matter of making Zen our own, and it's a process. It doesn't start out that way. It's part of the maturation of Zen practice for each of us, is to have it start in a certain way, but then to kind of evolve and shift as we grow. It grows. So I want to say some things about that, and I'll have some reference to some really rich Dogen quotes in the way. So those of you who read the newsletter, you might have seen Schoen's words on the character of Zhong, which is the middle, the middle way and middle kingdom in Chinese. The Zhong, it's either a rectangle, a square, or a circle with a line coming right through the middle. And that's being right at the center of your own life in the way that we're talking about it. In one way, it's like, how can you not be in the center of your own life? But there's a way of being self-centered that, our autopilot, egocentric minds, kind of naturally put ourselves at the center. And that's not what we're talking about, with this Making Zen Your Own, to just make it entirely personal, entirely about you. Where you're really completely focused on your ideas, your opinions, and your conditions. It's not that at all. In fact, it's the opposite. It's being grounded in the limited perspective that you have, and in the failing, growing body that you have. And from there, being fully present to the greater reality that you are. This notion that we kind of have to be almost superhuman physically and mentally and spiritually in order to hold all of that. Other beings, the world, the conflicts afar, the suffering, the injustice, let alone what our family and friends are going through. That somehow, there needs to be this kind of superhuman capacity, superhuman depth. But that's not true. It's actually this human form in this moment can hold all of that. can be present to all of that. But the key is to be fully present to yourself and your own life. Our relationship with our practice starts by trying to fit our practice into our life. Right? We have a lot of things that we're interested in that we do, and then we become interested in Zen practice, and we understand Zen practice to be a certain specific forms that we take, and we practice with certain people at certain times, right? And fit those into all the other things we're doing with our life. Now that's the natural way that we start. Everybody, in a sense, starts that way. But the way practice evolves is that you go from putting your practice into your life to putting your life into your practice. This is something I've been saying for a while, and I believe Tetsuji mentioned it a few weeks ago. And some of his comments, it resonated with him. So the first part, where we're putting the practice into our life, it's something of a limited perspective on both your life and your practice. Okay? And that's okay. That's how we see things. But it's a limited perspective. As we shift into this view of really putting our life into our practice, it's a more expanded view of both our life and our practice. You find that your practice completely holds your life. There's no conflict. There's no gap. There's no lack of capacity. The practice really holds it all. Okay. When you take care of your practice and you really make it a conscious thing, you're really paying attention to your practice. So you suddenly find that your life is boundless, because there's nothing that is not included. And your practice is the same. It's boundless. There is nothing that's not included. And there's the territory where now it opens up to really include other people. Well, it's boundless. So of course others are included too, and the attention starts to turn out of that self-centered perspective, to what's going on with other people. You become more interested in listening more deeply to them. You become more heart aware of what's going on in the world, what's going on with your family and friends. And that becomes a part of your life that is put into the practice, which holds everything. So this does have to come from a very vulnerable and honest, just being present to yourself always. And that's what our Zazen is. It's being fully present to ourselves, moment after moment after moment after moment, with a great intensity of concentration and a great capacity of heart and a great willingness to be with whatever arises, non-judgmentally. In the Genjokoan, Dogen, he talks about this matter of a self-centered perspective and a greater than self-centered perspective, yet also being self-centered. So the way I put it is it's personal and impersonal at the same time. So he has this metaphor. He says, when you sail out in a boat to the middle of the ocean where no land is in sight, and you view the four directions, the ocean looks circular, and it doesn't look any other way. Okay? But the ocean isn't round, yet the horizons is always circular. just because of the nature of our fixed perspective. So it doesn't look any other way. It has to look circular. But in fact, the ocean isn't a big circular pond. What it really is it's infinite in variety. The features of the ocean are infinite in variety. It's like a palace, he says. It's like a jewel. It only looks circular as far as you can see at that time. All things are like this. Okay. We have a fixed perspective. And from that fixed perspective, we see things relatively. You could say farther and near, okay, or left and right within that field of view. Establishes relations oriented towards each other, okay? So Bernie Glassman, who there are memorials going on now in these days to memorialize his life and his passing several years ago, right around this time. He came late in his life to call the Buddha's Four Noble Truths the Four Noble Opinions. Isn't that a radical acknowledgement of the relativity of perspective? I love it. There's so much in making Zen your own in that recognition. Now, there's something I feel about the fact that these Four Noble Truths, they come down to us in words, right? They're verbalized truths, you know, and words always tend to fix things, oftentimes. You know, that's why we say Zen is beyond words and letters, because it's really much against the fixing of anything in the mind or in the body. Okay, the suffering that's caused by that. So to have these truths, you know, articulated or verbalized in a certain way, as soon as that happens, relations of meaning and perspective are set up. So then we try to understand, well, what he meant by suffering, what he meant by dukkha, you know, what was his experience and what were people's experience back then that he was referring to in that way. You know, it's all based on certain kind of fixities of understandings. So there's a great power and a great liberation in calling them the opinions, but then also a great responsibility to say, well, what's really true? What's really true? You know, not only what's true for me, but what's really true for all of us. What's true in the biggest sense. So after talking with this analogy of being in the center of the ocean and seeing the circle, he moves to a different kind of mode of seeing. He says, though there are many features in the dusty world and the world beyond conditions, you see and understand only what your eye of practice can reach. In order to learn the nature of the myriad things, you must know that although they may look round or square, the other features of oceans and mountains are infinite in variety. Whole worlds are there. It is so not only around you, but also directly beneath your feet or in a drop of water. Yeah, there's a shift that goes from that self-centered where everything is oriented from that single place. And now you can see an eternity in a grain of sand, or the moon in the dewdrop. You know, I'm sure many of us have had these experiences of being so absorbed in what we are engaged with. It could be weeding, or it could be doing art, or it could be cooking. That suddenly that becomes the entire universe. It contains the entire universe. I had a real profound experience a couple of months ago at the Denver Art Museum. I was looking at these impressionist paintings that they have in one of the wings, and they've got some really amazing Manets and Monets, and they have one, I think, or two Van Goghs. And we've all seen these impressionist painters our whole lives. I know I have, and I've seen them in different contexts, and I've seen the real deal, on the walls of galleries, and I've seen them in reproductions. And this was the first time I was looking at a landscape. It was a Monet, and something clicked, and I was just immersed in the world of this landscape. It was just grasses and a river. And the palette was, there's not a huge range of colors in the palette. It's not like dramatic or anything. It's very, I want to say natural, but natural isn't the right word, because it's very sort of surreal almost. You can tell it's a painting, right? You can see the brush strokes. So it's not photorealistic at all. But there's something in the artistry and the genius of the artist that I just was completely immersed in that world. It just lasted a few seconds. And then I kind of came back, and then I went back in, and I was able to go back in and out. And then for the next few that I was looking at, I was actually able to enter into this immersive experience that both was that scene and wasn't that scene. It was the scene inside me. Something vast had been evoked that I was experiencing. This was the catalyst, sensory catalyst for. It was quite profound. And I think this is the experience that Dogen is talking about when we really see the world in the flower, or in the dewdrop, or in a piece of cheese, It's all there. So making Zen your own means making this your own. And seeing, feeling that it is your own.